Thank you so much, and let me please ask you to take your seat on the stage for the panel discussion, and let me ask Dr. Tilesch to come. And I know you work together, and this is the first time you're meeting, but if you don't mind, I'd like to keep him to myself. Thank you. And let me please ask the other two distinguished panelists, partner and founder of Cydrill Software Security, Mr. László Drajkó, and Vice Chairman of the Board of the Defense Innovation Accelerator for the North Atlantic, NATO, and CEO of the Defense Innovation Research Institute, Mr. Imre Porkoláb. When we set the foundation, George did, for this panel, of course, we had two topics in mind. First of all, the one that you've been talking about. AI could be a force for good, and it has risks and harms. According to some people, it's on an unforeseen magnitude due to the uniqueness of the technology. According to others, it's the same game as it has been before, nothing new here, minimize risks, regulate well, use ethically, punish those who don't. And there's also the thing that you just mentioned, and Mr. Bár did too before, that we all know that harms in the digital age sometimes are not as obvious as hitting someone by a car. So just think of social media. Let's see the two main topics. One is if there are unique risks or if there are not. We still have the question on how to protect the vulnerable, mostly the youth. Let's elaborate on the ones, the initiatives that you've already started talking about, cutting-edge initiatives implemented effectively by institutions, or cutting-edge initiatives in the field of education, advocacy, and awareness raising for the general public, for non-coders, to understand more about AI safety and security. And the other big topic is, of course, having a distinguished military representative on the panel is another big danger to the general public, which is 21st century aggressors with increasingly robust AI capabilities. How will it affect defense mechanisms on national and international levels? I have two questions to the two gentlemen, and then I wanted to give it over to you because you worked together before, so you will have something to say in common about protecting the vulnerable. Let me start with Mr. Drajkó, who has been in senior management positions at many leading technology providers, from Microsoft to telecom, until he started founding startups to aim to find so-called preemptive measures by education for the human side of technology. So what does that mean? How would you define specifically preemptive measures against dangers in the AI age?
All right, so let's start with understanding the problem. So when we look at AI, we had these words, safety and security. Now, the first issue with that, I don't know how many languages are represented here, but most of the European languages and some of the Asians translate these two words into the same identical word, into your native language. In Hungarian, both are biztonság. In German, it would be Sicherheit or something similar. So what is the difference? And we have to consider a malicious actor in case of security. So by design, when we go and look at systems, it's very important to think in a way that what malicious actors would consider. Let me give you a very specific example. Today, Adrian had said that we publish, or in his case, Microsoft publish the intended use of their AI. So this paper is read by few people. 99% are hackers. They read it because what it is not intended to do, that's what they will try. This is how hacking works. So how can you get a system prepared for countering those things that it was not supposed to do? And it sounds like the vendors are already putting hackers in a position, oh, they don't need to see what the system does. They only need to see what the system was not supposed to do, because this is how they get access to users, to data, to children, to everywhere. And when you design a system, this type of reverse thinking has to be installed in the process, from educating the designers, the data scientists, the coders, the people that create the train set, that extract the data, transfer load along the pipeline. So unless we start from ground up, we will end up in a very same situation we ended up with software. What happened, people started to code, write software. We are now 30 years into using PCs and computers. Still today, every day, there is a new vulnerability coming out. There is something out there that's a new hack. So in 30 years, we got into this cyber trouble more and more, and not less and less. Why? Because the whole process, as George mentioned in the first session, is an afterthought. You do something and then you try to fix it. What if you do it right at the first place? What does it require to do it right at the first place? I think the answer is actually here above. It's human foresight. We have to, it's not the AI who should be responsible, it's the human who should be responsible. And responsibility starts with learning. We do that to our kids, so we should exercise that ourselves. That's what I meant.
Thank you. And just one more short comment to introduce Mr. Porkoláb in a deeper context, because he's an expert on guerrilla warfare and counterterrorism in the context of, for example, leadership theory, mission command, other than traditional. And when we had this conversation before preparing for today, you had a very memorable statement that I might be misquoting. Correct me then, please. I think you said what we are facing today in the AI age is a human adaptation challenge and not a technological challenge. I understand your point, but isn't it both?
It is both in a way, but if you look at the problem, in my opinion, it's more of a human challenge. But let me first. This is a very serious topic that we are discussing here, so I just want to put you into ease first. And since László mentioned, secure and security, I was just thinking, that we are working with large language models. So if we were interacting with, let's say, an AI, for the U.S. Army, for example, if you say secure the area, it means the soldiers will surround the area. No one goes in and out. If you say the same thing, secure the area for the Air Force, they're going to drop a bomb on it. So you have to be very mindful what you're communicating. But going back to your question, I would like to illustrate it with an example that really helped me to understand the gravity of the problem that we are facing here. And this comes from Astro Teller. He's the grandson of Edward Teller. He is leading Google X right now. As Astro said, is that about 100 years ago, for us humans, it took about 15 years to adapt to new technology. So we've been improving, and right now, around 2023, it takes about 10 years. So we have improved somewhat, but on a linear manner. So everyone understands digital technology here, so I'm not going to assault your intelligence, but because of the digital nature of everything that is changing right now, it's exponential. So it took about 25 years, 100 years ago, for a technology to actually mature and spread all around the globe. Right now, the disruption cycles are 5 to 7 years. So for us humans, it takes 10 years to adapt. For a technology to actually, go global takes 5 to 7 years. In AI, there is a disruption every 6 weeks. So what Astro said is that there is already a delta. We are lagging behind, and if we are not able to completely reimagine the way we learn, both individually and as an organization, we're going to be falling behind, and there will be all kinds of scenarios that will arise. So that's why I'm always emphasizing. Of course, technological change is happening anyway, because there will be governments, larger corporations, even SMEs now, the small and medium enterprises, who will drive that trend, and especially the smaller ones. Have a bigger sort of chance right now to disrupt whole industries. We have seen it with a couple of them, going unicorn and then changing things. But it's ultimately us humans who really need to reimagine the wheel there.
On that note, please, Maria and George, help us deep dwell into the cutting-edge initiatives and the best case scenarios that you might elaborate on, if you have any. You've mentioned some.
I wanted to start by framing this whole session, because what we are doing is very experimental here in this session, to be honest. When people in the AI scene talk about AI for good, they're talking about, sustainable development goals, UN stuff, so things that are limited to what AI can do in a positive manner for civilization. And the more I was thinking about when designing this conference, like, there are so many topics that are merging over these 3 topics that, are being embodied now on this very stage by 3 different leaders. That are overlapping. Like, if I'm taking just the PED model that Maria has just expected, I would say this is not very much different from what Imre is dealing with when redesigning the military for the AI age. So what I was trying to say is that I think that we would be one of the things that I usually say is that AI is a double-edged sword, and I think that to be able to, not just to survive, but to thrive in this age, we have to take both of these aspects into consideration and tackle them, in parallel, and not be bogged down with, with just the fear part or the hope part, because everything is basically rests on our capability of good judgment and adaptability. And what Imre was saying about, the exponentiality, coming from Silicon Valley, we have experienced the crying wolf effect way too much when people even 10, 15 years ago were saying, like, we are in the exponential age and this is exponential technology. I think before the birth of generative AI and coming with such ferocity and speed onto this world, it has been mostly hogwash. But now I'm really subscribing to this idea that there is an enormous difference between aspects like how technology is progressing. Imre said 6 weeks. I would even say 2 weeks or something speedier in the world of AI. And regulation that is still counting in years, and human adaptation and societal adaptation that is still 8 to 10 years. At the very least. So this is a crucial challenge, and this is why I wanted the representatives of different viewpoints and aspects to join the same stage to co-create the language that will help us tackle this whole issue.
Language is very important, we know this, George, because we've seen AI being misinterpreted in the news, and that triggers this fear factor, so much so that the last 6 months, with the verge of many open letters talking about the existential threat, have created a certain perception of AI among population. And it was interesting, the last 2 weeks I've seen a number of studies, US, UK, and Europe, surveying the perception of the public perception on AI. And the vast majority, similar finding, but the vast majority of people are afraid of AI, that AI are going to take their job, AI going to concentrate the power in the same hands. And before we talk about the existential threats of AI is harming people right here, right now. Yeah. And I think on one hand, we were a bit desperate to actually draw attention on the risk, as I said in my presentation, because it was difficult to point out how a ethereal entity is inflicting a physical harm. And it was due to the work of activists and forensic investigations that have brought to life cases when an algorithm has discriminated women, has punished people of color, have killed pedestrians, have predicted the grades of A-level students in UK based on other people's performance, not their own. And suddenly we found ourselves with very concrete examples when technology is harming us and we don't know what to do about it. So in a way, we've been crying for this public attention, but now it's time to turn it back into a more neutral and balanced act. Like when we understand that there are some existential threats, very, very possible, and they will discuss and are discussed in research right here, right now, we have to act upon it. And we have to start synchronizing the work of the regulators, how we design the tools internally, how we use it, because one set of intervention is not enough. That's why I talk extensively about the need to have all eyes on deck. That's why we need to bring everything together to make sure this powerful technology is used for good and we prevent the harms. And in this sector, probably something that we need to go back to the drawing board is how do we educate the wider public on AI? And I've been exposed to, education programs and plans to educate the public, the parents, the children. But it's hard because our lives are pretty complicated and intense, and you don't have time to spend half an hour, even 15 minutes to understand what AI is in your busy schedule. But again, the misuses of AI have helped us with the education, because when you have a use case that is flashed on all the news outlets and screens, suddenly put things in perspective, which gets us back to the language problem. How do we portray AI? How we use the term AI, which is, we know now it's an esoterical term, and so much so that people talk about AI and spirituality. And how do we make sure that we talk about limitation, as the previous panel discussed, the limitation of the use cases, the limitation of the data, the models themselves, the compute power we're using and how that harms the planet, and also being able to describe those benefits and limitation and risk in the same sentence. And that's how you educate. Is it enough? Time will tell.
I think it's not enough for the time being, but I very much agree with Maria that it is a very nuanced type of a topic that it is very hard to convey. And if you remember, when we worked together on that forum study, one of the biggest debate between you and I were like how to frame it for leaders, and our audience was senior executives, for them not just to understand, but feel the timeliness of it and feel the sense of urgency to act. Because even if it was 2 years ago, I think we were very much late in many regards, because AI, the way I usually frame it, and I'm just testing this framing on you guys, is that before generative AI, it was even, in some aspects, it was even more dangerous in a sense that it was happening to us. We had no possibility to act with AI, to create with AI, to be in charge of AI, to supervise AI. It was just something that it was at the core of many of the services, most of the services that we have been using. But it was happening to us, and we were innocent bystanders or victims of it. And with generative AI, at least the illusion or the notion of being put back in the saddle is what actually is happening. So, educating the public is absolutely important, but I am personally, as a consultant in the world, I'm still encountering lots of situations when CEOs and government leaders are still getting their information from, tabloid papers around AI. So the picture, the image in the mind, what they have on AI has not much to do with reality, because you're absolutely right that, more than 50%, in some questions, more than 60% of public opinion is actually afraid of AI. The reason why is the image of AI that has been planted into them, that it is not based on reality. With generative AI, with the tool-based perspective, the numbers that I'm seeing quite consistently for the last 9 months is that 2/3 majority is actually who are using these tools, and only the tools I'm saying. I'm not talking about the social technical system. I'm talking, ChatGPT. that people actually who use it in their work are primarily positive about that. So we have that like windmill syndrome that, you know, when like Don Quixote and the windmills, when we are attacking a phantom, an anthropomorphized AI that can gain consciousness any moment and that kind of thing, of course people are afraid of it. And when they see it more in the tool context, which is an oversimplification of the whole thing, I give you that, then people are primarily positive. So that was just a commentary. I would love to have your take on that, or something related.
Can I just, first of all, unpacking the EDTs, because it was up on the slide as well. So we are talking about AI here, but it's the emerging disruptive technologies for NATO that is really interesting. So these are the technologies that can really revolutionize warfare in a way, and have other possibilities, of course, as well, like quantum computing, biotechnology, and such. And obviously AI is part of it, and one of the most important things, because one of the first strategies that NATO came up with was on AI and the responsible use of AI, and we are talking a lot about that these days. So these things are, first of all, interrelated, but it was said before in a previous panel that implementation is very important, and this is where I want to come back to your point, Yuri, that we call it in the military operationalizing AI. So how do we bring the toolkit when it is being developed down to the end user, and actually there's an interaction between the developers and the end users, and how we can test, validate the technology in a sandbox, which we call exercises or test centers. And if we are talking about Diana, I'm not sure many of you have heard about Diana before, because it's a relatively new organization, but this is the Defense Innovation Accelerator for the North Atlantic that was specifically created to connect the defense innovation ecosystems in each and every NATO country. And this is very important, that the work that Diana does, because this is not a top-down approach. Obviously, we at the board of directors, we are giving strategic direction. But what Diana really does is that they have just announced 3 challenges, that there has been 1,300 applications for those challenges in a matter of weeks, which shows the interest and the willingness and 94% of these applications were SMEs, so small and medium enterprises, less than 100 people. But actually there are more than 100 test centers that are affiliated with NATO Diana right now. We just offered 4 more when they were here at the NATO Innovation Week last week in Budapest, because we had the leadership here, and the number is growing. And just imagine the sort of validation and testing and experimentation that you can do with the whole network of NATO, and these test sites and the network itself is enormous and growing each day. So I think that if we turn this around, this is how we can make this more secure, by operationalizing the technology, by pushing it down to the end user, and actually getting feedback early on, and then taking into account the feedback that they have provided, and not just pushing out the final technology and see what happens.
Just to add a few personal experiences to yours, and then back to the panelists. I had some involvement in military AI in the US, and one of the things, and I'm only saying that because it's counterintuitive for many civilians, but actually the defense part of government in the US are the ones who are usually behind AI ethics initiatives first and foremost. That's what I've experienced in the US, because the military leadership are the ones who first meet the technology and find the usage for the technology, and also foresee the enormous burden that it puts on them, both from the ethical perspective as a requirement of any democratic government and society, but also from the competitiveness perspective with the enemy powers who may go faster if not checked as much as we are in democratic societies. So that's the dilemma of the military, but I just wanted to share that for most people, the military may be pictured as somebody who, or some people who care less about ethics, and I'm saying that they actually care more, and NATO is leading the charge in that.
It sounds like we had the previous session, that was the romantic session. This is the disaster movie. So, sticking to that, I owe an apology to Eric because I inherited his title on the screen. So I'm sorry for that, Eric. It's not my mistake. I do not aspire your job, but I aspire by you when you said who is responsible, who is the person that is responsible. Is that the developer? Is that the business leader? How we are enforcing accountability? And I think this is a very important question. And on this question, we can be very, very pragmatic. So let's take a trip to the offline world. You know, people were building buildings for thousands of years. So many people died. You know, we hear stories how many people died on the pyramids. Today, you go to a construction work, you see high-rise building being built. You see the safety and the security measures. You see that people that are working on the site are not only professionals of their trade, but they, regardless of their trade, they are also trained on workplace safety and security before they enter the site. Then they have the tools, how they create personal and institutional security by building buildings. So whether it's a subcontractor who has to have insurance to do something before they enter to the site, the whole system is so highly sophisticated and exists. So what is that infrastructure? How can we create the same level of measures, the same level of standards that who can touch my data? What safety and security trainings they have to comply to? Who can touch my code? Who can, do things in this system? The model is there. It exists in other industries. We just been part of an industry that had always people running forward, and the rest of the legislation trying to catch up. Now, let me ask you a question. I assume everyone in the room has already tried ChatGPT or something similar to it. Who knows what prompt injection is? 1, 2, 3, a few people. So that word possibly did not exist a year ago. Imagine the challenge for legislation, that they need to have a law that describes not the past, but the future that goes under. So what we need to realize is, unless in any other industry, learning is not a one-time test. Living in an AI reality, humans are responsible when they understand actually having AI is not a free job. Having AI is a constant learning, and we have to comply first with that learning.
I think I would like to change the disastrous movie into a feel-good one, because I've been in so many disastrous movies to date that I'm not going to go towards a romantic one, but feel-good one factor. Why? Is because usually when we are in events like this, we talk about what the regulators are doing, what the organizations are doing, but we are not talking about what's your responsibility, my responsibility as an individual. How should I feel empowered by everything that's going on? And I think, to me, that's probably where we should be focusing more. It's the fact that artificial intelligence, the technology behind, gives us a unique chance to look at what's wrong with our society, because AI is like a mirror, like a very, very high fidelity mirror, but also what's wrong with us in our lives, and actually, make positive changes, be proactive. And while there will be instances where AI is both terrifying and super exciting in groups where we wouldn't have access to, we do have access to changing our day-to-day life on how we use our tools. And as László said, it's down to us how we see this as a challenge, as an opportunity to learn and to develop more. But in the same time, how do we develop a healthy relationship with this technology? And when I think about these unhealthy obsessions we have with tech, starting with our children and ending with us, how many check the phone the first thing when they wake up and the last thing when they go to bed? How many of you? I'm super guilty of this. But in the same way, you know, society has established a healthier relationship with smoking. If you think in 2020s, there are commercials with children as young as 7 and 8 in the US smoking. We've gone into a long, long journey to understand the damage of the cigarettes on children in the society and make peace with it and have a healthier relationship with smoking. Why can't we do the same with AI? Why can't we strive ourselves to develop healthy habits and understand the risk in a realistic fashion, not the Hollywood, Elon Musk-y type of existential threats, but something that concerns us, our children, our family, and focus on, you know, fostering our social interactions and everything that makes us human. Because on one hand, what technology does, on top of, you know, giving us enormous opportunities to make our life easier and funner and, you know, access to information, is actually steals bit by bit, second by second, our humanity, which we need to strive to progress. And that's what I would want to pass you as a message, as a challenge. You know, read the news, be as terrified or excited about what you read, but all the time ask, what is it for me and how can I contribute to that, rather than allowing the Elon Musk-y and all the other big tech gurus and politicians to make decisions for you. You're here today, that means that you want to be an active part where you are on making AI work for us and for society. So let's make this a feel-good movie. Not a disastrous one. We had enough of those. Thank you.
Can I just add to that line of thought? Because then again, coming from a military perspective, I think that we need to bring in trust here. And that needs a lot of evangelizing and a lot of explanation. And how many of you have seen the new Top Gun movie with Tom Cruise? Yeah, quite a few. Well, first of all, you know, AI is beautiful. You know, he has not aged a day, right, in 30 years. Secondly, and most importantly, the movie was about a very important question, whether if it's going to be pilots, you know, piloting aircrafts in the future, or it's going to be autonomous systems. And obviously, we know, you know, which way the movie takes us. But it is an ethical and more importantly, a trust debate within the U.S. Air Force for quite some time. I mean, there are very costly airframes in there, which right now it seems that some of the pilots will be outdated and obsolete. I mean, 2 years ago there was news about an autonomous drone which was able to land on an aircraft carrier. So ask any pilot, you know, it takes about 20 years of training. It's very difficult to do. So if you, you know, refresh the software on that type of drone, you know, each and every drone can do that. No 20 years training is needed. So it's very real. But right now what's happening is that you have these airframes and then you have a somewhat cheaper airframe that's called the Valkyr, which is totally autonomous. It's flying as a loyal wingman with you. You know, it can relay communications. It can do many things. You know, even it can sort of sacrifice itself, you know, and take the bombs instead of the pilot. So it has all kinds of applications, but a lot of discussion needs to be made within the services. The same thing happened with the US Navy when they were introducing these autonomous ships. And this is very important that we start these discussions with our children and how these trust issues, because by the time they grow up, they will have a much better understanding of the relationship with autonomous systems and AI.
I've got a tricky question for you, Maria. And so that's a personal anecdote of mine. I have a son who's turning 6 this December, and we have been faced with a very tough conundrum about 2 years ago in a California kindergarten. I may have told you the story at that time. So basically, we enrolled my kid into a kindergarten that is extremely technophobic. So we had to sign a paper that we are not giving them, you know, any devices before the age of 12, which I was completely fine with, but he's very much interested in STEM, so science, technology, engineering, and mathematics topics. I gave him a lot of like hardcover books with titles like quantum computing for babies, AI for babies, machine learning for babies. And that might sound perverted to many of you, but he really loved those books because they conveyed the fundamentals of these fields of science in a very approachable manner to kids. So the day came when the kindergarten teacher called me crying, and she was like, we are in big trouble, your son is in big trouble. And I said, why? So he was asked by the teacher the question in front of the whole class, like, what is the most important thing in life? And my little son stared out into the distance and he said, the most important thing in life is information and quantum computing. Then everybody was frozen and he was trying to help and he said, you need qubits for that. So what I'm trying to shed a light on here is that even if we are reducing their exposure to technology, oftentimes at big shifts in history, we have knee-jerk reactions as fossilized old institutions like education. And there is no way around it. So the question to you now, finally, sorry about the long monologue, is probably both you and I see the emergence of these co-pilot or assistant type technologies. They're very much around the corner. I think this fall will be all around like major technology companies pushing out these kinds of assistants. Many of them will be targeted at our children, I suppose. So how do you see the role of these assistants which will be omnipresent going forward, especially considering the fact that many of those companies producing those technologies have an advertising-based model, if you know what I mean?
It's such an interesting question, and in the same time it's hard to answer because this is a very contextual matter. I think, first of all, it's down to each individual parents and how do they want to educate their children using technology as you've done it. The choice to allow them free access to devices or no access or somewhere in between. And secondly is what your child is best at. You know, we have done a very poor job through the centuries in assuming that everyone is a similar box than the next box next to us. And we created an educational system that forced us in boxes, in molds. And suddenly, now we're realizing, oh, we are so different, 8 billion of unique individuals. And AI can help tap into the unique talents that each person in early stages of life will manifest. How can we use AI to surface those talents? Either there is an inclination to be a more, focus on social interaction or creativity or on STEM, and being able to use all our arsenal, all analog or digital tools to be able to foster the child talents, because that's the end goal, is actually understand what's those natural talents, and being to grow those talents using everything you have at your disposal. And of course you will have to fight with your current education system, which is still very much not tailored based on the children's needs. So be a little bit of a boundaries breaking and challenging, but at the end of the day is about your child development, also well-being, because when we are tapping into our natural inclination and talents, we are the happiest. And there are plenty of studies to demonstrate that. When children are forced to do things they don't like, they will resent the things they are doing plus the parents. More you encourage, your child to do something what they like, even if they are, a miles away from where you had in mind about your child, which is very much potentially influenced by who you wanted to be and you weren't able to achieve that, you will have a happier child, because the child-centric approach, plus the human-centric, recognizes that each individual is unique, and everything we have at our disposal is to be aligned with our human goals, with our ambitions to flourish and continue to thrive, rather than the other way around.
Can I add something to that? I think there is an important aspect, one layer down. So when we talk about AI, we discussed the transparency. We need to understand if there was an AI behind answering something or not. But I think it's important, especially in case of large language modules, that how this module operates. Is this a supervised learning or an unsupervised learning? This is so critical, whether it's question of children, whether you go for software engineers that are looking at Copilot as a single wisdom of truth that is committing the same crime against coding than most of the developers commit, because that's what the statistics suggests. So had I understood that I'm using something that's based on unsupervised learning versus there is a set of disciplines how this model was trained, and that discipline set is transparent for me, and I know let's say what school I'm entering, whether it's my workforce, whether it's my children, it doesn't matter. But we need to have that level of transparency in multiple layers, not only on the top.
And just because I see that we're running out of time, I wanted to add another layer, because whenever we are talking about military, we always believe that this is some kind of a separate thing that's out there in its box. But no, and I wanted to bring in national resilience, because it's each and every one of you who are sitting in this room, big companies, smaller ones, educators, all of you, and especially at the national level, to ensure the safety and security of this nation, of your nation, and overall, the security of this planet for our children. That's why we are educating them, and that's what national resilience is. And this is not a military's job.
And the age of AI is the age of cognitive warfare, so we can choose individually whether we want to be the weakest link or the strongest link in that.
On that note, I still hope at the end of this event, everyone will feel that this was a feel-good movie, because we've had, and you will still have, so many amazing speakers that will empower you to really be active part on AI rather than at the receiving end. So feel good.
Thank you.
Not disaster movie, not action movie. Feel good and romantic at times.
Esther Perel, famous psychotherapist, said 2 weeks ago at her speech at Brain Bar that about customization of applications and digitally enhanced living, that assisted living used to be reserved for the elderly. Now it's for the young. So now we're going to have a 20-minute break, and we'd like to have you all back for the third round of topics. Let's give a big round of applause to our panelists. Thank you very much.